You speak, yet people interrupt you. You work hard, yet others overlook you. You are capable, yet somehow, you are still tested, challenged, and underestimated. The problem is not your intelligence, it is not your effort. It is your aura, or rather, the absence of one. How to build a presence so powerful that resistance fades before conflict even begins. Because in the real world, power does not belong to the loudest, it belongs to the one no one feels safe challenging. Before a single word leaves your mouth, judgment has already been made. Not logically, not fairly, but instinctively. Every human interaction begins with a silent calculation, a rapid psychological scan performed beneath conscious awareness. The mind asks questions no one admits asking. Is this person confident? Are they secure? Can they be pressured? Can they be ignored? And within seconds, people decide how they will treat you. This is the uncomfortable truth most never learn. Respect is rarely granted based on who you truly are. It is granted based on who people believe you are. Perception comes first. Reality arrives later, if it arrives at all. History has always belonged to those who understood this invisible law. Authority is not announced through credentials or effort. It is suggested through presence. The way you stand, the way you pause, the way you look at someone without rushing to fill silence. These signals speak louder than achievement ever could. Human beings are not purely rational creatures. We are survival-oriented observers. Our ancestors survived by quickly identifying threat and hierarchy. That instinct never disappeared. It simply adapted to modern environments. Offices, social circles, meetings, conversations, all function like quiet arenas where dominance and safety are constantly evaluated. When someone appears uncertain, others unconsciously test boundaries. They interrupt more easily. They question more aggressively. They dismiss ideas faster, not because they consciously choose cruelty, but because uncertainty invites pressure. Weak perception creates permission. You may possess intelligence, skill, and good intentions, yet if your presence communicates hesitation, the world responds accordingly. People rarely challenge strength openly, but they instinctively probe what feels unstable. This is why two individuals can say the exact same sentence, yet receive completely different reactions. One is ignored, the other is respected. The difference is not content, it is perceived authority. Perception shapes expectation, and expectation shapes behavior. When others perceive certainty, they adjust themselves before conflict even begins. They listen more carefully. They choose words more cautiously. They hesitate before opposing you, not because you demanded obedience, but because your presence suggests consequence. Powerful individuals understand something deeply strategic. They do not try to convince others of their worth verbally. They allow behavior, pacing, and composure to create assumptions on their behalf. The human mind fills gaps automatically. When someone speaks calmly, moves deliberately, and shows no urgency to prove themselves, observers project competence onto them. Silence becomes interpreted as confidence. Patience becomes interpreted as control. And once perception is formed, people defend it themselves. If others believe you are composed and self-assured, they begin interpreting your actions through that lens. Even mistakes appear intentional. Even pauses appear thoughtful. Perception protects you long before ability is tested. But the reverse is equally true. If your energy communicates doubt, every action becomes questioned. Every explanation sounds defensive. Every success appears accidental. This is why effort alone fails to command respect. Effort is invisible. Presence is undeniable. You are always signaling something, even when you believe you are doing nothing. Nervous movements signal insecurity. Excessive smiling signals approval-seeking. Rapid speech signals anxiety. Over-explaining signals fear of rejection. And others respond instantly, often without knowing why. To build power, you must first understand that social reality operates like a stage where perception directs the script. People react not to your intentions, but to the emotional impression you create. When you enter a room, your posture speaks before your voice. Your eye contact establishes boundaries before conversation begins. Your willingness to remain calm in silence tells others whether you seek validation or command space naturally. Authority is rarely seized through confrontation. It is granted quietly when others sense stability they cannot easily disturb. The moment your presence communicates emotional self-sufficiency, challenges decrease. Not because people suddenly agree with you, but because opposition feels less rewarding and more uncertain. Perception reshapes behavior without a single argument being won. And those who master perception discover something profound. The strongest form of power is the kind that prevents conflict from ever needing to occur. Human beings fear what they cannot fully predict. Not loud threats, not obvious aggression, but uncertainty. From ancient courts to modern boardrooms, The individuals who commanded the deepest respect were rarely the most expressive. They were the most unreadable. Their thoughts were not easily accessed. Their reactions were not easily anticipated. And because of this, people approached them carefully. Predictability feels safe. Mystery creates caution. When others believe they understand you completely, they begin to relax their restraint. They joke more freely at your expense. They challenge more openly. They assume your limits. Familiarity removes hesitation, and hesitation is the invisible shield of authority. The moment people can predict your reaction, they know how far they can push you. If they know you will always forgive, they test boundaries. If they know you will always explain yourself, they demand justification. If they know you will always react emotionally, they learn how to provoke you. But when your responses remain measured and selective, something changes in the psychological atmosphere. The human mind dislikes uncertainty because uncertainty carries risk. Without clear prediction, people become cautious, calculating every interaction more carefully. Controlled mystery is not silence for the sake of silence. It is intentional restraint, revealing only what serves you, while withholding what makes you easy to read. Most people overshare because they seek connection. They explain their motives, reveal their insecurities, narrate their plans, and expose their emotions in an attempt to feel understood. Yet every unnecessary revelation removes a layer of psychological protection. Information gives others a map of your internal world. And once someone possesses that map, they know where pressure works best. Powerful individuals understand that transparency must be strategic. They allow others to know enough to feel comfortable, but never enough to feel superior. Their emotions remain composed, their intentions partially concealed, their next move slightly uncertain. This uncertainty creates a subtle tension, not fear born from intimidation, but respect born from unpredictability. Consider how attention shifts toward the quiet observer in a group conversation. While others compete for visibility, the reserved individual becomes the focus of curiosity. People begin projecting depth onto them. Silence invites interpretation, and interpretation often magnifies perceived intelligence and strength. The less you reveal impulsively, the more others imagine. Mystery allows perception to work in your favor. When someone cannot easily categorize you, they hesitate before challenging you. The brain seeks patterns to feel safe, and when patterns are unclear, caution replaces confidence. Even confident personalities slow down around individuals they cannot read. Controlled mystery also protects emotional authority. Emotional exposure without control invites manipulation. When others know exactly what excites, angers, or wounds you, they gain influence over your reactions. But when your emotional landscape remains disciplined and measured, attempts to provoke you lose effectiveness. Provocation depends on predictability. Remove predictability, and confrontation becomes uncertain territory. This does not mean becoming cold or distant beyond reason. True mystery balances warmth with restraint. You engage, but you do not reveal everything. You listen more than you disclose. You respond thoughtfully, rather than immediately. You allow pauses to exist without rushing to fill them with explanations. These pauses create psychological gravity. People lean in, they watch more closely, they think more carefully before speaking. Your presence begins to feel heavier, not through dominance, but through controlled absence of excess information. Mystery also signals self-sufficiency. When someone constantly explains themselves, it suggests dependence on approval. When someone feels no urgency to justify every action, it implies internal certainty. Others interpret this as confidence rooted deeply enough to resist external judgment. And confidence that does not seek validation becomes difficult to challenge. Over time, your restraint changes how conversations unfold. Others begin revealing more about themselves while you reveal less. They attempt to understand your position while yours remains partially concealed. Without realizing it, they invest more psychological energy into interpreting you than opposing you. The dynamic quietly shifts. You become the observer, rather than the one being evaluated. Controlled mystery transforms presence into something people approach carefully, speak to thoughtfully, and challenge reluctantly, because uncertainty introduces the possibility of unseen strength, hidden limits, and consequences they cannot fully calculate. Nothing reveals a person's true position in the social hierarchy faster than their emotional reactions. Words can lie, appearances can deceive, but emotion, especially uncontrolled emotion, exposes vulnerability instantly. The moment frustration controls your tone, irritation controls your expression, or anger controls your decisions, an invisible shift occurs. The interaction is no longer about ideas or logic, it becomes about control. And whoever controls the emotional temperature controls the power dynamic. Most people believe dominance comes from force, loudness, or aggression. Yet aggression often signals the opposite. It reveals that someone has lost internal command. When emotions take over, decision-making narrows, awareness shrinks, and reactions become predictable, and predictability invites challenge. Human beings instinctively test emotional instability, not consciously, not maliciously, but naturally. When someone reacts strongly to criticism, others learn they have discovered a pressure point. When someone becomes defensive, observers sense insecurity. When someone rushes to justify themselves, it communicates fear of judgment. Emotion, when unmanaged, becomes information, and information becomes leverage. Emotional discipline removes that leverage. Imagine two individuals facing confrontation. One raises their voice, interrupts, and rushes to defend every accusation. The other listens quietly, breath steady, expression controlled, responding only after a deliberate pause, even without authority or status. The calm individual begins to appear dominant. Why? Because calmness signals internal stability. The human brain associates composure with capability. In moments of tension, we instinctively look toward the person who remains steady. Calm behavior suggests confidence, preparation, and emotional independence. It implies that external pressure cannot easily penetrate internal control, and people rarely challenge what appears unshakable. Emotional discipline does not mean suppressing emotion entirely. It means mastering the timing and expression of emotion so that it serves intention rather than impulse. Power lies not in feeling less, but in choosing when feelings are visible. When provoked, most individuals react immediately because silence feels uncomfortable. They rush to correct misunderstandings, defend reputation, or reclaim emotional balance. But immediate reaction places control in the hands of the provocateur. The one who provokes dictates the rhythm. Emotional discipline breaks this pattern. A pause interrupts expectation. Silence forces the other person to confront uncertainty. Instead of gaining satisfaction from reaction, they encounter composure, and composure creates psychological imbalance for them instead. Calmness under pressure communicates something deeply unsettling. You are not easily moved. And when people sense they cannot influence your emotional state, they lose confidence in challenging you further. Consider how leaders throughout history maintained authority, not through constant dominance but through restraint. They listened longer than others expected. They spoke slower than the situation demanded. Their emotional reactions appeared measured, never rushed. This created the impression that they operated from calculation rather than impulse. Calculation feels dangerous to oppose. Emotionally disciplined individuals also conserve energy, while others exhaust themselves reacting to every comment, criticism, or perceived slight. The disciplined person chooses selectively what deserves response. This selectivity elevates their reactions in value. When they finally speak strongly, it carries weight. Because it is rare, scarcity amplifies impact. Another hidden effect emerges. Emotional discipline shifts attention away from your weaknesses and toward your presence. When reactions are controlled, observers focus more on your words than your emotional state. Conversations become anchored around your calmness rather than your vulnerability. And calmness spreads influence silently. Groups naturally stabilize around the most emotionally steady person. In moments of uncertainty, people mirror emotional cues from those around them. If you remain composed, tension decreases. If you escalate, chaos grows. Over time, others begin associating your presence with stability itself. Stability becomes authority. This authority does not need to be announced. It is felt. People begin moderating their own behavior around you. They speak more carefully, argue less impulsively, and hesitate before creating conflict because your emotional neutrality removes the emotional rewards of confrontation. Provocation loses purpose when reaction disappears. Emotional discipline transforms you into someone difficult to manipulate, difficult to destabilize, and therefore difficult to challenge. Because dominance in human interaction rarely belongs to the loudest voice, but to the individual who remains internally unmoved while others struggle to maintain control. Most people misunderstand power because they confuse visibility with authority. They believe dominance requires constant speaking, constant proving, constant assertion. They raise their voices to command attention, repeat their opinions to establish importance, and attempt to overwhelm conversations through volume and persistence. Yet loud assertion often produces the opposite effect. The more someone insists on being seen as powerful, the more others sense insecurity beneath the performance. True authority rarely needs to announce itself. It is recognized before it is declared. Strategic presence operates differently. It does not compete for attention. It attracts it naturally. When you enter a space, people begin forming impressions immediately, not based on how much you say, but on how comfortably you occupy silence. Presence is the ability to exist without rushing to justify your existence. It is the quiet confidence that you belong wherever you stand. Those who lack presence attempt to fill every gap with noise. They interrupt silence because silence feels like invisibility. But silence, when held confidently, becomes gravity. It pulls attention toward you rather than pushing attention away. Humans are drawn to certainty. When someone appears fully settled within themselves, others instinctively slow down around them. Conversations adjust. Energy recalibrates. Without force or demand, influence begins to form. Strategic presence begins with restraint. Restraint in speech prevents dilution of your words. When someone speaks constantly, listeners stop assigning value to what is said. Words become background noise. But when someone speaks selectively, each statement gains weight. People listen more carefully because they know communication is intentional, not impulsive. The same principle governs movement and reaction. Sudden gestures, restless posture, and excessive agreement signal a desire to be accepted. Controlled movement signals self-possession. When your actions appear deliberate rather than reactive, observers assume confidence even before evidence appears. Presence communicates through pacing. Slower responses suggest thoughtfulness. Measured gestures suggest control. Steady eye contact suggests comfort under observation. These signals tell others that you are not seeking approval from the environment. Instead, the environment adjusts around you, and adjustment is the foundation of authority. Loud assertion tries to force respect externally. Strategic presence generates respect internally. Within observers, people convince themselves of your authority because your behavior aligns with how confident individuals naturally behave. There is also a deeper psychological mechanism at work. When someone dominates conversation aggressively, others instinctively resist. Humans protect autonomy, and overt attempts at dominance trigger subtle opposition. But when influence is quiet and composed, resistance weakens because control feels voluntary rather than imposed. Strategic presence removes the need for confrontation. Instead of arguing to prove intelligence, you allow silence to invite curiosity. Instead of defending every opinion, you let confidence imply certainty. Instead of reacting instantly, you create pauses that shift attention toward you naturally. These pauses are powerful because they disrupt expectation. Most people anticipate immediate responses. When you pause calmly, the dynamic changes. Others begin questioning their own position while waiting for yours. Anticipation elevates perceived authority. Another element of strategic presence is emotional neutrality during attention. Many individuals become overly animated when focus turns toward them, revealing eagerness for validation, but controlled composure under attention communicates familiarity with importance. It suggests you are accustomed to being listened to. Familiarity with attention creates status. Over time, people begin associating your presence with stability and clarity. They feel less inclined to challenge aggressively because confrontation against calm certainty feels socially risky. Loud individuals invite competition, grounded individuals discourage it. Strategic presence also protects energy. Instead of exhausting yourself proving value repeatedly, you allow consistency to build reputation slowly. Others observe patterns, calm responses, deliberate speech, controlled reactions, and begin forming assumptions about strength and competence. These assumptions become self-reinforcing. People treat you with caution because others treat you with caution. Social proof amplifies aura without effort. Authority grows not through forceful moments, but through repeated demonstrations of quiet control. Eventually, something subtle begins to happen. You speak less, yet people listen more. You assert less, yet resistance decreases. You do not chase respect, yet respect appears preemptively, created by the simple fact that your presence communicates certainty, composure, and an unspoken message that power does not need to shout when it already knows it is there. Power was never meant to be loud. The world teaches you to fight harder, speak more, prove yourself endlessly, as if respect is something won through constant effort. But the deeper truth is far more strategic and far more unsettling. People do not challenge strength they can feel. Throughout this journey, you have seen that aura is not magic, not charisma, and not dominance performed for attention. It is the silent result of perception shaped carefully, mystery controlled intentionally, emotions mastered completely, and presence carried with deliberate restraint. When perception works in your favor, people assume confidence before testing you. When mystery surrounds you, others hesitate because they cannot predict you. When emotional discipline guides you, provocation loses its power. When your presence speaks louder than assertion, resistance fades naturally. This is how influence operates beneath words. Most conflicts never begin because one person unconsciously signals that challenge will be costly. Not through aggression, but through stability. Not through intimidation, but through certainty. An aura is simply the alignment between your inner control and your outward signals. When your movements are calm, your speech measured, your reactions disciplined, and your silence intentional, something changes in how the world responds to you. People become careful, they listen longer, they interrupt less, they question more thoughtfully, and often they choose not to challenge you at all. Not because you demanded respect, but because your presence made disrespect feel unnatural. The paradox of true power is this: the strongest individuals rarely need confrontation. Their energy resolves tension before it escalates. Their composure discourages chaos. Their restraint creates authority without force. And slowly, almost unnoticed, you step into a different position within every room you enter. You stop chasing validation. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop explaining your worth. Instead, you become still, deliberate, unreadable in the right ways. And in that stillness, others sense something they cannot easily define, a quiet certainty that does not seek approval and does not fear opposition. That is the moment your aura begins to work for you. Because the highest form of power is not winning battles. It is becoming the person no one feels comfortable fighting in the first place.